Okay, so there were a couple of questions about last week that I thought I would start out with. Okay, so the first one, somebody's asking about the difference between a horse and a horse that's conjured by a, by a magician, or an illusory horse. Maybe even a horse that you see inside a hologram. Okay? So you have those two horses, okay? In terms of being a person, is the horse a person? Yes. Is the illusory horse a person? No. Okay. Is the horse's body part of the form aggregate?
Yes.
Is the illusory horse's body part of the form aggregate? No. Is the horse's body part of, is it something that's perceivable by the visual consciousness?
Yes.
Is the illusory horse's body something perceivable by the visual consciousness?
Yes. Oh, I guess so. So it is a form. It falls in the category of form.
It falls in the category of form. Okay. Is it a real body? No. Okay. Does the horse have consciousness?
Yes.
Does the illusory horse have consciousness?
No.
Is the horse empty of true existence?
Yes.
Is the illusory horse empty of true existence?
The illusion, the appearances.
Is the illusory horse empty of true existence?
Yes.
Well, if the illusory horse is not empty of true existence, then it means it is truly existent. Is the illusory horse truly existent?
No.
No. Is it empty of true existence?
Yes.
Yes. Is that an actual emptiness? Like other things are empty?
Yes.
No, because for something to be an actual emptiness, you have to have a conventional truth, and it's, the emptiness is the ultimate nature of that. Okay? Does the illusory horse exist?
Yes.
No.
Well, as an illusory horse. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, the illusion of the horse exists. Is there a horse there?
No.
No. Okay.
The question was?
Yeah. So the illusory horse exists. Right? Really? You can get on an illusory horse and gallop away? The illusion.
The illusion exists.
Yeah, the illusion of a horse exists. The appearance of the horse exists. Is there a real horse?
No.
No, why not?
It can't function as a horse.
It can't function as a horse. What can't it do?
It doesn't eat, it doesn't breathe, it doesn't...
Doesn't eat, doesn't breathe. But if there's an illusory horse, it's certainly, it can be entertaining like a real horse.
Yeah, you can't ride it. Well, but it's your mind.
You can't ride it into
But
town?
who is creating it? Him is creating my vision, or it's me that's creating him?
Well, I'm not an expert in producing illusory horses, but we I remember when we studied this with Geshe-san and Rinchen, Genla, have you seen an illusory horse? But apparently in ancient India, I don't know, they could do something. And apparently it's done by, there's some medicine, some substance. I'm not sure if the substance is is applied, because they always talk about sticks and stones appear, you know, they're the base that then appear as the illusory horses and elephants. So it sounds like the substance is applied to the sticks and stones. And then, but I'm not sure on this. And then the magician also says some kind of mantra. And then the sticks and stones appear like an illusory, like a horse. And horses and elephants. And if you were there at the time he cast the spell, you think they're real horses and elephants.
Could you touch him? Touch the horse?
I never asked that. That would be very interesting. Could you touch the illusory horse?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Wow.
You know, I don't know. That's next time we study this. Well, I'll get more information on illusory horses.
Because the illusory horse can appear illusory to any of your sense consciousnesses, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be just your visual sense consciousness.
Probably, like it smells like a horse. Yeah. You know, I wonder if you touch it, does it touch, you know, this is interesting. Does it just affect the eye consciousness or does it affect all the consciousness? I'll have to find out. Yeah. But like if we use a horse in a television, that, you know, we think that's a real horse, but that's only affecting our eye consciousness, isn't it? Yeah. Well, yeah, okay, our hearing. But it certainly doesn't affect our tactile consciousness or anything like that. Yeah?
I've heard, and that I believe it, but some Lama in Tibet, and like Jesus when he appeared those bread, like I heard a Lama that there was starving, and he, from his pot, he was getting rice, all like rice, and he fed a bunch of people. He created it.
Yeah, that kind of stuff I don't know about, because they talk about, what was it, Chandra Goman? No, Chandra Kirti, milking the picture of the cow. I don't know how, you know, that has to do with their, you know, exceptional powers, because I think they're able to work with the elements and transform the elements. But that's not the topic of our conversation right now. Well, no,
The same thing.
but that's transforming the elements, and so, which is different. Whereas creating an illusion, when you turn on the TV and you see a horse there, you know, or you see food in a TV picture, you know, that's the food that you're seeing in the television isn't real food. Nobody can eat that. You know, but you're talking about a situation where somebody could actually control the physical elements and create something that was food. So that has to do with somebody's meditative ability. And I don't know how that one works either. Yeah, I kind of rely on, you know, Uncle Ben's. Right?
Yeah, but that illusory, like now that you can eat it, you can touch it, you can. That's why I said, what is the difference? That illusory thing that maybe you can.
Yeah, but see, that's a different case, because it's different than a magician or it's different than the food in a television.
Yeah.
When somebody is able, due to their samadhi, or due to their spiritual realizations, where they're able to manipulate the elements and create something out of. Yeah, it's a different ball game. Okay. Okay, so the illusory horse is an object of the eye consciousness. Yeah. Well, actually, is the illusory horse the object? The illusion of the horse is the object. Yeah.
Like with a mirage, like a, is it called a mirage?
Yeah, mirage.
This is an oasis in mirage.
It's an appearance of form, you know. But, yeah, but yeah, there's something out there, and it is appearing to the eye consciousness. So it could be, but the thing is, the eye consciousness is mistaken with respect to that. So it could be a form, but but the consciousness is mistaken with respect to what that form is.
Oh.
Yeah, because if you look at the television, yeah, I mean there is form there, the thing on the TV, but our eye consciousness is mistaken with respect to it when we think it's a real food or person in the TV. Yeah, but there is something. I mean, when you look in the mirror, you're perceiving colors and shapes. Yeah, so there's form in the mirror, but the eye consciousness that thinks, that not thinks, but the eye consciousness that perceives it as a face is wrong.
Like a rainbow is a good example.
Yeah.
There have to be elements there for that to happen.
Yeah, but the appearance of a rainbow is correct. I mean, there is a rainbow. Okay. So, so the illusory horse actually doesn't exist. Yeah, but the actual horse does exist. But the appearance of a horse exists, and the illusion of a horse exists. Okay? Yeah, the horse is a person, the illusory horse is not a person.
What is it?
It's an appearance. It's a form that our eye consciousness, we have a wrong eye consciousness that's perceiving it. Okay. When you look in the mirror and you see a face, okay, there's color and shape there. Is there a real face? Is there appearance of a face? Okay. So your eye consciousness is apprehending, I mean, there's the appearance of the face, but the eye consciousness is mistaken in thinking that that's a real face.
The eye consciousness doesn't think.
No, it doesn't think. But it can. But here we're just talking. It doesn't recognize it as an illusion. It recognizes it as a face.
Okay, and then the mental
Consciousness says, "Oh, there's a person in the mirror."
yes, so that's another
Yeah,
consciousness.
right. And then your mom comes along and says, "No, there's not a person in the mirror. It just looks like that." Yeah. Okay. Then the other question. Okay, in offering the mandala, of course, the 4 continents and Mount Meru are non-existence. Now, I was thinking about this from last week. If there were a God that perceived Mount Meru and the 4 continents, because it says that the gods live around Mount Meru, then Mount Meru would be in existence even though we couldn't perceive it. Okay? I haven't heard of anybody saying that there's gods that perceive Mount Meru. Yeah. But I haven't really heard what the gods perceive, When you talk about the thing of there's a glass of fluid, and the pretas see it as pus and blood, and the gods see it as nectar, and human beings see it as water. All 3 of those are valid cognizers, or reliable cognizers, according to the karma of the beings in those particular realms. Okay? So we might say to us, if somebody says, is there pus and blood in there? We would say no. And from the point of view of a human being, somebody who looked in here and saw pus and blood would have a wrong consciousness. But from the point of view of a preta who looked in here and saw pus and blood, that would be a reliable consciousness.
The
the classification of the phenomenon would be the same.
It's still a form.
It's still a form.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So in my visualization, you know, instead of the 4 continents of Mount Meru, there's 4 beautiful meadows with tons of wildflowers and a mountain that looks pretty much exactly like Mount Rainier. Okay. The mental image itself isn't existent. Okay, so there's a mental image, there's a conceptual appearance that exists. Okay, now you're having a conceptual appearance of meadows. Okay, is that conceptual appearance a real meadow? No. Are there real meadows?
Yes.
Okay, so what we say is that to that thought consciousness that's visualizing this, okay, the appearing object is the appearance of the appearing object is the conceptual appearance of a meadow. The apprehended object is let me get this right. The apprehended object is, or just the object is a meadow. Okay? So the apprehended object is a meadow, yeah? I mean, when you close your eyes and you visualize a meadow, your apprehended object is a meadow. Yeah? The appearing object is the conceptual appearance of a meadow. Yeah? The focal object is also the meadow.
Well, you don't know if it's real yet or not.
Well, no, because the idea with conceptual appearance is not necessarily that you have one, that when you visualize a meadow that you're offering, it doesn't have to be a specific meadow that you've seen with your eyes. When we think of a meadow, we're taking different meadows that we've seen at different times in different places and bringing all those things together and creating a conceptual appearance. It doesn't have to relate to one specific meadow. It's like when I say think of a table, okay? You know, you have, in your mind, you have the conceptual appearance of a table. That doesn't have to be a particular table that exists, because you're just taking qualities you know about tables and constructing a table in your mind. Okay? So a table there, it's just a general table. It doesn't have to be a specific thing that you've seen before. Okay? But the thing about conceptual appearances is that you're mixing things up. Okay? Because you're taking things that exist in different times, different places, that have different natures, and creating an appearance out of them. Okay? Whereas when you see something directly, it's very vivid and you're direct, you know, that thing's directly appearing to you. So it's like, you know, it's real interesting to do an experiment of, you know, like look at a raisin, yeah, and then close your eyes and think about that raisin. And then you get the difference between when you look at it, or look at my tree, okay, and then close your eyes and think of my tree. Okay, so there's a difference, isn't there? When you look at my tree, you know, there's this specific body that is appearing to your visual consciousness. You're seeing the gray, you're seeing the shape of the body and the white paws and everything. When you close your eyes and you think of my tree, it's not as vivid, is it? And you might miss out on some of the details. And you're not sure exactly where the white ends and the gray begins. And you don't see all the little white hairs that she has mixed in with the gray fur. And you don't see her wiggle her ear because she knows you're talking about her. Okay? So it's a conceptual appearance, but we still can know the object through the conceptual appearance. And because we're, you know, so much of our lives we're dealing in conceptual appearances because that's what our thought consciousness is dealing with. You know, every time we talk, hearing a teaching, you know, the sound is an object of direct perception, but everything that I'm thinking about and everything that you're, you know, thinking about as we're doing that, that's all thought consciousness. So that's all conceptual appearances appearing to your mental consciousness.
But I'm
Yeah.
still stuck on whether that meadow is an existent or not.
The meadow
Uh-huh,
is existent.
uh-huh. Those
Okay.
meadows are not.
That particular meadow that has a blue flower here and a red flower there, that I don't know about, you know. But meadow, yes, is existent. Okay? So when you were talking about thinking of your first grade friend or whatever it is, okay, the image you have of when you remember your first grade friend, your first grade friend exists. She doesn't, that child does not exist now, but your first grade friend did exist. She wasn't like the illusory horse, okay? Yeah, but you're remembering something at a different time now. So, you know, she existed at that time, but you're remembering it now. Okay? Okay, the apprehended object would be the person that you're thinking about, and the appearing object would be the conceptual appearance of that person who was a child however many years ago.
So do you only apprehend in the present?
Hmm?
Apprehension requires being in the present,
No,
No.
because that person isn't a child.
so I can apprehend the past.
Yeah. Yeah. So that person exists. To exist, you don't have to exist now. It can be a past object.
So it doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't exist anymore, but it does exist. Are you going to tell me yesterday doesn't exist?
It doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't exist right now, but does it exist? Did yesterday happen? Yes. Yesterday happened. Yeah, you can't say yesterday is totally non-existent. Yeah, it does exist. It's just not existing now. Okay. Does tomorrow exist?
Yes.
Yes. Does it exist now?
No.
No.
What does exist mean then?
This is the question you're supposed to be thinking about. Okay, then there's the thing. You quoted something from Jeffrey. Without even considering the penetrating clairvoyances of Buddhas and yogis, the various hungry ghosts and unusual types of beings which exist everywhere ensure that even particles in the centers of huge rocks are cognized by some being. Okay, you didn't tell me where he said that or in what context he said that. I'm assuming he said it in the sense that we say, you know, a definition of an existent is something that is perceivable by mind. So it's in that context. It doesn't have to be that we perceive it, because there's lots of things that exist that we don't perceive. And this is the problem with some of the people when they get, you know, into material reductionism thing. It only exists if I can see it. Yeah. Well, can you see your stomach? Yeah. Can you see the child that you were? Can you see the backside of the moon? You know, there's so many things that exist that we can't see. Yeah. But how do we know that the moon has a backside? I would say through inference. Yeah, we collect certain scientific data, and from that we assume, you know, we learn that there's a backside. Anyway, something that has a front side has to have a backside. Yeah. Can't have one without the other. Okay? So should we go back here? Excuse me, sweetie.
So just to make sure, to summarize, if something exists at all, somewhere some consciousness is apprehending it as existing. Somewhere,
Yeah,
somehow
wow.
there is consciousness that,
Has apprehended it, or, you know, can apprehend it, or whatever.
okay.
Okay? So when a tree falls in the forest and there's nobody around, is there a sound?
For the Devas in the neighborhood, probably.
What?
For the Devas in the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, there's a sound, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's other beings who perceive it. It doesn't have to be us. Yeah?
We had example for non-existent as rabbit's horn.
Yeah?
So now if we're not able to, I guess, experience, right, as a human beings, how can we say it's non-existent?
Because we're talking now when we say, use the rabbit horn as an example of a non-existent, we're talking about commonly known things on our planet. We're not talking about what might exist in a God realm or what might exist in another universe. We're talking just about what is commonly known on our planet. And so we say there's no such thing as a rabbit's horn. Although there is some kind of rabbit, because, you know, people always find that has some big kind of horns. It's some kind of big hair of some, you know, because people, whenever you use this as an example, then they go and find this image and show you that.
It's not real, though.
Yeah.
It's not real.
No, I thought
The
there.
jackalope, it's like an
not.
example of it's a mythological creature from like.
Yeah, it's like
Mexico.
a big trick in taxidermy. It's not real.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The jackalope. Okay. So there really is no rabbit's horn. Okay. So all those pictures they sent were fakes. Okay. So we were talking about, you know, an existent is something that's perceivable by mind, and existents are divided into two categories, which are permanent and impermanent. Okay. What does permanent mean? Not changing moment to moment. What does impermanent mean?
Changing moment to moment.
Okay.
And created by cause.
Yeah. And impermanent is synonymous with product. Okay. So, or created by causes and conditions or whatever. Okay. So, last time we were talking about permanent phenomena. So there's empty space. Here, space means the lack of obstructability and tangibility, and it's a negative. It's a non-affirming negative. It's the absence of tangibility and obstructability that exists everywhere, even where there is form. Because without there being a basic lack of tangibility and obstructability, a form could not fill that space. Another example of a permanent phenomena is true cessation, what we called analytic cessation. Non-analytic cessation is like a temporary cessation of an affliction. Let's say, you know, that you meditate on, you have attachments, so you meditate on death, and then your attachment goes down, so that would be like a non-analytical sensation. Emptiness is a permanent phenomena. All these conceptual appearances are a permanent phenomena. And when you get into debating language, there's all sorts of other permanent phenomena too, but we won't go into that. Okay, so permanent phenomena had two categories. One is an occasional permanent that may exist for a short while but not forever, and a non-occasional permanent is something that exists all that time. So what's an example of an occasional permanent?
Nirvana?
The emptiness of an object.
The emptiness of a specific object. Nirvana is a good question.
It's not occasional.
There's different kinds of nirvana. We have natural nirvana, which is like the emptiness of the mind. That one always exists. Yeah? When we talk about nirvana being the purified aspect of a mind that is free from afflictions, that nirvana is something that doesn't always exist. When you become an arhat, it exists, and from then on it's going to. Okay, but not before. But the natural nirvana exists before. Okay, there's different kinds of nirvana. And then thing or functional, then impermanent phenomena, okay. What did I do here? Okay, so permanent and impermanent. Impermanent are also called things, or functional phenomena, something like that. They have three categories, which are form, consciousness, abstract composites. Oh, good. You can read. So forms are things that appear without the medium of, forms are things that are atomic and made of little particles. Yeah. Well, not exactly. I take that back. Form, you know what the definition of form is? What is suitable to be called form. So it covers all the things. Okay. Well, don't you love that? Form is what is suitable to be called form. That gives you a ton of information. Okay. So we have our five senses and our mental consciousness. Okay. Forms are what appear to our five senses. Mental consciousnesses can perceive many different things. There's a certain kind of form that appears to a mental consciousness, and then the mental consciousness also can perceive things that are not forms. And those are particular kinds of forms that appear directly to a mental consciousness, which we'll get into. Okay, so within our five senses, the eye consciousness apprehends color and shape. That's one form. Second form is sound, okay, smell, taste, tactile sensations. Under tactile sensations, you have all sorts of interesting things. You have hunger, you have thirst, roughness, smoothness, hardness, softness, any kind of, piercing feelings, any kind of thing that's experienced with our body. Okay, so Venerable Jigme had all this, whatever was going on, those sensations were form. Okay, yeah. The pain is the feeling. That's part of a different aggregate. Okay. Then when we get to forms that appear only to mental consciousnesses, there's different kinds. Okay, so I thought I would just talk about some of them. These have never been entirely clear to me. I mean, some of them are clearer than others, okay? But one is, it's called forms arising from aggregation. And what this means is that a single, because the way they believed in things is there were the 4 elements, or sometimes 5 elements, and these, so you had earth, water, fire, air, space, and then aggregations of these elements, of these individual particles, would make the gross particles. But the single particle doesn't appear like to our eye consciousness. Okay? So it's classified as a form for mental consciousness. Okay? So an individual particle. Yeah? Because I mean, if you think about it, like a form, like an atom. Do we know atoms by our visual consciousness? No. Okay. We know atoms basically by inference. But, you know, you would think that if somebody had some kind of, meditative power, that they could see individual atoms. But that kind of atom that would appear, you know, to somebody with meditative powers would be this kind of form, a form that appears to mental consciousness, because they wouldn't see it with their eyes. Okay, another kind of form is space forms. Okay, space appears both to an eye consciousness and a mental consciousness. And thus the bluest space that appears to an eye consciousness is a visible form, whereas the space that appears to a mental consciousness is a form for mental consciousness. And both of these are different than permanent space. But they would say, like from here to there, you see some kind of, you know, space, some kind of whatever color it is. So that's something, you know, they say we can perceive impermanent space with our, well, they say we can perceive that with our eye consciousness, yeah, which is what he's saying here. But he's also saying there's another kind of impermanent space that you can perceive with your mental consciousness. Don't ask me what that is. Maybe that's the space between atoms and electrons. I'll read you what Jeffrey says, and then you will understand it as well as I do. Space appears both to an eye consciousness and a mental consciousness, and thus the bluish space that appears to an eye consciousness is a visible form through our eye, whereas the space that appears to a mental consciousness is a form for a mental consciousness. So far, he has not given us an example of a space that appears to a mental consciousness. But both of these are impermanent, whereas uncaused space, which is a non-affirming negative of obstructive contact, appears only to an inferential mental consciousness and is permanent. So he does not give an example of the kind of space form that appears to a mental consciousness, which might mean that he understands it as well as we do.
Was he enjoying when he wrote that?
Don't ask me any more questions, because I've told you what I know, and I have a feeling Jeffrey has told us what he knows. So wait until the Tibetan Geshe comes and you can grill him on this. And good luck. Okay, then there's what's called form arising from promises. What these are is certain vows that we take. You know, when we take the 5 precepts, when we take monastic ordination, those kind of vows are a special kind of form that is perceivable only to mental consciousness. I have asked so many questions about this, it still does not make sense to me. But the Prasangikas accept it, so it must be God's truth. But I don't understand it.
So perceivable to a Buddhist consciousness.
It's called an imperceivable form. It's an impermanent phenomena, okay, that arises. I'll read you what Jeffrey says. Okay. Actually, there's three kinds of this form. One is a vow. One is called a non-vow, and what it refers to is when somebody does a non-virtuous action repeatedly. It's kind of like they've made this determination to do it, so it's this kind of non-vow form. And then some kind of vow, jhanic vow. I'll read you what Jeffrey says. I have been through this many times, and I cannot explain it to you from my understanding. Okay, when one takes a vow of individual liberation, okay, like your 5 precepts or monastic precepts, a form arises in dependence on the shape of the body, as in crouching, because you're crouching when you take the vows. So a form arises in dependence upon the shape of the body and in dependence upon the sounds of speech, as in declaring that one will turn away from killing. So depending on the position of your body, depending on the sound of your speech, saying, I will turn away from killing, then there's this form that arises. This subtle physical entity is said to arise at the moment of first taking a vow and remains with the person until losing the vow, which means you break it from the root, or death. Because when you die, you lose your monastic ordination, your 5 precepts. Similarly, a form arising from non-restraint, as, for instance, in dependence on a butcher's physical and verbal actions in killing animals and selling their flesh. A middling variety of such is a form that arises from physical or verbal virtue. Forms arising from promises are continuations of virtue or negativity, and arise from revelatory actions, that means actions you can perceive, of body and speech, or arise from cultivating meditative stabilization. Since the motivations of these actions are not knowable by others, they are called non-revelatory forms or imperceptible forms. Understand?
Yes.
Good. Okay, then the next one. I've asked so many people about how taking a precept can produce a non-revelatory form, you know, an imperceptible form. But you'll remember, those of you who've been in Taiwan, they talk about the precept body. That's it. Yeah, you want to get the precept body, which is this form that is not perceivable to the eye consciousness, that arises dependent upon the position of your body and the sound of your voice when you're taking the precepts.
Is that from...
The Vaibhasikas and the Prasangikas assert this. Okay? Yeah?
There's a question from the word. What is the source of the reading?
Oh, I'm reading Jeffrey Hopkins' Meditation on Emptiness. Okay, this is page 234. Okay, then there's another, then the next one is called imaginary forms. So dream objects such as elephants, yeah, so all the things that we dream about are a form appearing to the mental consciousness, okay? And non-actual objects of meditation, such as corpses filling the world, okay, appear as if they were actual forms, but are not. Okay, so if you do one of these meditations in the mindfulness of the body, where you imagine like the universe filled of corpses, here I think you're talking about somebody who doesn't have meditative stabilization, just a beginner, you know, who's perceiving these kinds of things, you know. So it sounds like a form that you're intentionally, you know, creating in some way, okay? So it makes me wonder, you know, when we, I think when we visualize the Buddha, it must be this kind of form. Okay? But then I ask, what's the difference between this kind of form and thinking about a Buddha?
It's like we talked about with the illusory object, calling that a form.
Mm-hmm.
It seems quite similar, but we usually think of form as something much more substantial.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but
have things that are more what you might call ethereal.
yeah, more ethereal. But what's the difference between what's appearing to my mind when I visualize a Buddha and when I think about what the Buddha looks like?
It seems like when you think about the Buddha, you're trying to recall features that you might have visualized rather than like in a sense conjuring them.
Yeah. So maybe the one that you're conjuring is this kind of form.
Right, and then when you're thinking about it, you're reflecting on that.
On, yeah, maybe something like that. Yeah. Anyway, these things appear as if they were actual forms, but are not. Thus, they are classified as imaginary forms. The Prasangikas say that a dream consciousness is solely a mental consciousness appearing in the aspects of the five sense consciousnesses. So there's no real eye consciousness there. So if there's no real eye consciousness, there can't be a real thing that you're seeing in a dream. Yeah? So that's why it's the mental consciousness that's dreaming, and these are the objects of that mental consciousness. A dream object is an external object, external in the sense that it's not part of the person, affecting a mental consciousness, just as reflections in a mirror, a reflection in a mirror is an external object affecting an eye consciousness. Okay, so the reflection in the mirror, the five senses, the reflection is an external, it's object that is causing an eye consciousness, because you look in the mirror and you're seeing colors and shapes. Okay, so in a similar way, the dream object, yeah, is affecting the mental consciousness. And the mental consciousness is appearing in the aspect of the sense consciousnesses, even though sense consciousnesses are not functioning. Yeah?
When you talk about when we take a precept, it takes a form. Is it in the same way that when we look at the Buddha and we see all his aura, that form, is it that same thing?
I don't think it's exactly the same, no. I've never been able to get really clear on this imperceptible form, exactly what it is and how it's created and what it's made out of. You know, I mean, I get different answers, and I've thought about it, and I really don't understand it. So I really cannot answer any more questions about that, because I've told you what I know, which is I don't understand it. And that's why, you know, I have this, I mean, I see in some ways why they assert it, but also I can see arguments that to me makes sense for saying there's no such thing. But that's not what I want to get into right now. Okay? So a dream, okay, so the dream object is, you know, an external object affecting a mental consciousness, just as a reflection in a mirror is an external object affecting an eye consciousness. Okay, this is interesting. The Satantrikas, Chittamadrins, and Yogacarya Svatantrikas say that a mirror image is a false appearance to the mind and is not a different entity from the mind. That's because they say that even the cup isn't a different entity from the mind. The Prasangikas, however, say that reflections, the falling hairs, this is something they talk about a lot. There's some kind of eye disease that you have where you perceive falling hairs. Yeah? Even though there's, what, do you know the name of it?
Vitreous floaters.
What?
Vitreous floaters.
Vitreous
And we all have
floaters.
them, just some people don't see them, and some people can't.
Yeah.
And when your vitreous really comes down, you see them. I mean, you can have a vitreous attachment and you'll see black.
Yeah, okay. So vitreous floaters. Yeah. So the Prasangikas say that reflections, vitreous floaters, okay, and mirages are visible forms just as echoes are sounds. Okay? A consciousness perceiving these is nevertheless mistaken because, for example, a mirror image of a face appears to be a face and not just a mirror image. Okay? So it's a wrong consciousness. When you hear an echo and you think there's really a person, it's a person's voice over there. When you hear a tape recorder, you know, I remember one time somebody gave me, or there was some interview of somebody in an animal shelter, and I was listening to it, and in the tape there were the sounds of cats in the background, and Achi got so agitated, you know, because he thought there were real cats. Yeah? So it's interesting, isn't it? When we hear a tape or a recording or a TV program, we relate to it so much as if it's a real thing, don't we? Yeah? I mean, we get so emotional about it and everything, although as if it's a real thing. It is an object appearing to the visual consciousness, but it doesn't exist the way it appears. It's a form, but it's not the thing we think it is. Okay, kind of interesting, isn't it? But we're so fooled. I mean, the whole purpose of, you know, why do we watch movies? You know, it's everything is to get us all revved up, isn't it? And we love the emotional experience of watching a movie. And if you didn't feel as if that were real, you wouldn't get any emotion and you wouldn't enjoy watching it. So we really enjoy the deception. Yeah? And this was my question last week when I was asking about the Colorado shooting. You know, why was the violence on the Batman movie entertainment? But when there was actual violence at the same time as the violence on the screen, that was not entertainment.
It was such a great question.
Yeah? And it's interesting that, you know, you were getting fooled by a false appearance of the violence, but that's very entertaining for some people. Yeah? Quite interesting, isn't it? You know, you like that kind of rush, and, you know, I mean, because your body reacts when you watch violence and everything. I mean, your heartbeat quickens and you get all these physiological responses. Yeah. And we call that entertainment. But when you get those same physiological responses because it's actually happening in the room, it's no longer entertainment. Very peculiar, isn't it? You know?
It doesn't seem so peculiar because the mind watching the movie knows you're watching the movie, and that's why it's okay.
Well, in one way, the mind watching the movie knows it's watching the movie. But if we really, really watch the movie as if we knew it was just a movie, then we would not react to these things, so they wouldn't be so exciting.
We even physiologically react to it as though it were real.
Yeah, we
at every level, if it's good.
yeah, you physiologically react.
But like paint on a wall, I mean, like, I might react to a lot of things in a room, but like paint on the wall, the back of my mind knows this is just a movie, so I can suspend and go with it and have all my emotion.
Yeah.
But when the guy actually walks in and starts shooting people,
Yeah, but isn't that interesting that you suspend, you know it's a movie, so you suspend knowing it's a movie so that you can really get into it and have the same physiological responses as you can when it's real. But when it's real, you don't have to pay $10 to go and watch it.
Available.
It's not on schedule.
When you share that, for me, it touches the part of me that is violent in me. That part that is violent can sit and watch it and have a, that's where I connected with that.
Yeah.
That's my violent part.
Yeah. So
But
you're,
it's so deep down not connected. But when you say that, it's like, oh my goodness.
yeah. So you're saying the reason we find it, we're what's the word, captivated by the appearance of violence, is because it is a mirror of the violence we have inside, and yet it's safe.
Yes.
It's our violence appearing in front of us, but it's safe because we're not actually hurting anybody. Yeah, we think.
Have consequences.
You're right. Yeah, we're not going to have consequences. We can imagine doing all these violent things or being the victim of the violent things. And it, brings up our own violence, but we're not going to have real consequences from it.
When you talked about the Buddha, that he was under the Bodhi tree and he got in contact with all that past lives and all the ugly stuff, I said, that's what it is.
Yeah.
That is what is not conscious, but one day I'm gonna have to face it. So, yeah. So I don't want to continue to nourish it by going to the movies. And
Exactly.
eating it.
Right.
Well, isn't it also planting more seeds?
Yeah, it's definitely planting more
So
seeds.
it's not
You know?
just food.
Yeah, I mean, when you watch those movies, it's planting seeds of violence inside of us and finding violence interesting and stimulating and intriguing. Yeah, that's definitely planting seeds. I mean, same thing. I mean, and for the people, they say, well, there's not very much research that says that playing violent video games or watching violent movies makes somebody violent. Well, if that's really true, why then, if while somebody's watching a movie, flash an imperceivable, as a separate event, image of Coca-Cola? They do this. They flash a Coca-Cola. Nobody knows they've seen Coca-Cola on the level of your eye consciousness, but that seed was implanted, so you go out and buy something. If those things did not make you more violent, why does flashing that image of Coca-Cola make you go buy one?
On another level, like the football player, they train first on a visual level, that they look at nowadays via computer and go every direction, so they train their mind visual, and then they train automatically their whole bodies with us, even if they're not going on the field.
Yeah, right. How you learn to fly a plane or drive a car, everything, in a simulated environment. The whole thing's fake. Pretty amazing, huh? Let me just see. Oh, it's time to end. But what's your comment?
Just a quick question. So the dream object is affecting mental consciousness.
Yeah.
What consciousness creates the dream object?
It doesn't say what consciousness creates the dream object. It just says it's a dream object. It doesn't tell you what it's made out of. So I don't know how the dream objects are made.
Seems almost, it seems really silly that, it seems almost like your karma and your habits that create the dream object.
Yeah.
That kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like it would come from the mind, but it's also a form. But if we're talking about the Buddha we visualize, that's coming from our mind too.
Or the pus and blood, or the nectar, or
Well,
I mean, that's not based on our
yeah, but you know, you can't just say this water comes from my mind. The water, is related to my mind, but I can't say that my mind, produced the material substance of the, yeah. Yeah. So these kinds of things are a little bit tricky. Yeah. And they're as tricky to me as they are to you. Yeah, and I've asked many questions and I still, yeah. So we'll see when, wait until Ageshi comes and then go for it.